This is KCBD News Channel 11 at 10.
I was hoping for justice, and this isn't giving Jonathan justice at all. At all.
Jonathan Pesqueda's family members say they feel betrayed. The drunk driver who killed him left the courtroom on probation today, left to serve a total of 6 months in prison over the next 10 years. Good evening, and a thank you for joining us. We'll get to that unique sentence shortly, but first, a Lubbock capital murder trial, 5 years in the making, is underway.
Tonight, Hollis Daniels III says he is guilty of murdering Texas Tech police officer Floyd East Jr., but his defense team says the 25-year-old should not be sentenced to death.
KCBD News Channel 11's Case Wilbanks has covered this since a shooting in 2017. He was in the courtroom today and joined us live outside the courthouse with a look inside. Case?
And Karen and Abner, the day began with that admission of guilt. Hollis Daniels pleading guilty and saying he is responsible for the killing of Officer East. So the trial turns to his punishment. What will it be? Will it be life in prison without parole or death? Hollis Daniels III walked into district court Monday more than 5 years after he now admits to shooting and killing Texas Tech police officer Floyd East Jr. on October 9th in 2017. It's a scene state prosecutors described as part of opening statements. The then 19-year-old freshman shooting East point blank in the head from a gun he pulled from his pant leg. Fellow officer James Oswald took the stand, saying he ran to the room to find Officer East, but no body camera and no Daniels. But Oswald stayed so Officer East wouldn't die alone. To the jury, the state said Daniels may have accepted responsibility for the shooting, but that it was too little, too late. The defense said it was an unimaginable tragedy, but Daniels wasn't in his right mind, and the jury will have to decide how this, quote, young man will die. A man the defense says will take the stand at some point, insisting on answering every question. The defense pinned the blame on Daniels' depression, suicidal thoughts, and drug use and the lack of intervention. Judge McClendon overruled an objection by the defense to use unadjudicated criminal matters in Daniels' past, allowing the state to bring it up as a juvenile probation officer took the stand and prosecutors questioned her about Daniels' participation in a drug court program, with the state pointing out a history with drugs, but the help he received and his acknowledgments of wrongdoing, including a disrespect for police. And later, the state called an academic counselor to show Daniels' grades improving and changing attitude about school. The defense, though, cross-examined both witnesses and asked about the adequacy of drug intervention and about his anxiety as a student. The state's final witness Monday described Daniels as a liar and prone to anger outbursts, saying he knew him while at Texas Tech, a group of other students that gathered the night before this shooting. At a central Lubbock home, the witness said Daniels stole a handgun, describing him as acting aloof, but seemed he was not on drugs. The defense pressed the witness on prior statements describing Daniels as losing himself and that he was a different person. The witness said when he was notified the next day of an active shooter at Texas Tech, he knew the red-headed suspect had to be Hollis Daniels. Court is in recess until 9 in the morning. We expect the state to continue to follow witnesses at that point. Of course, we will be here, I along with my colleague, investigative reporter Shaylee Sanders, as this trial unfolds. Karen and Abner.
Thank you, Case.